Formula E is one of the most controversial motorsports going on today. You either seem to love it or hate it, and as a relative beginner to the world of Formula E, I thought it would be good to make a little video compiling my honest thoughts on the sport as of the Deere E3 of 2021. So let me just jump straight into it, and I like Formula E. I'm sure most of the people who hate Formula E with a burning passion are people of the older generations too stuck in the past to actually take a step back and enjoy Formula E for what it is, instead of comparing it to Formula 1, which is completely different. Yes, sure, the cars are much slower than F1 cars, don't make any noise, and a lot of the tracks do leave a lot to be desired, but it still is a lot of fun to be had, and arguably more action than some races in Formula 1, and unarguably in some cases. But anyway, I want to start by talking about the cars themselves. The beautiful Spark SRT-05E, built by Dallara and used by all 12 teams on the grid, as of course Formula E is a spec series. All of the cars are completely identical, naturally allowing for better racing, where the sport is much more reliant on the driver's skill than the engineering of the car. Obviously, the cars are all powered by electric motors, producing a maximum power during qualifying of only 335 brake horsepower. However, that is offset by the lightweight chassis and the ridiculous amount of torque, taking it from 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Modern Formula E cars, I feel, are weirdly enough most similar in concept to rally cars, with a ton more downforce of course. No mind-blowing speeds in a straight line, but incredibly nimble round corners and incredible acceleration to get cars out of the winding corners and tight hairpins featured in Formula E circuits. And speaking of which, let's get onto that then. The circuits of Formula E are definitely a mixed bag. Formula E circuits, with few exceptions, are street circuits in the heart of major cities across the world, most of which are incredibly narrow, tight and winding, leaving pretty much no room for error. If you make a mistake, you will 100% find yourself crashing into the sidewalls. Unfortunately, it is a fact, Formula E circuits do look very similar, very generic, and most tracks don't have any highlight features, and it can sometimes be pretty hard to distinguish between each other. But that is all for good reason, as I'll get onto shortly. Some circuits like Deere, as we saw just last weekend, have proven to produce some pretty good racing, especially into that Monza-esque turn 18 chicane. For example, that unbelievable overtake from Edoardo Mortara threading the needle in Saturday's race as of the recording of this video. But then on the other hand, you have circuits like Battersea Park for the London E3 a couple years back, which was pretty terrible, nowhere to overtake, with most of the corners consisting of tiny little chicanes, and was one of the most narrow circuits on the calendar, even by Formula E standards. Basically, you don't see Formula E racing on regular tracks like Spa and Monza, simply due to the limitations of the electric powertrain of the car. The short Formula E circuits require loads of braking zones and winding corners for the cars to regain energy, similar to the curve system in Formula 1, and would simply just lose too much energy at too fast a rate, over the course of a lap, speeding down, say, the full throttle straights of Monza. It's just not possible, although eventually it probably will be. Fully electric racing on longer circuits like Silverstone just can't be done. Formula E circuits have to be short, winding and have minimal straights, so the drivers can conserve energy throughout the course of a race. And speaking of the drivers, let's talk about them, why don't we? On the current grid we have Nick de Vries, 2019 Formula 2 champion, Stoffel Vandoorne, Pascal Wehrlein and Jean-Eric Vergne, all ex-Formula 1 drivers, Sebastian Buemi, two-time winner for Toyota at Le Mans, Antonio Felix da Costa, the current Formula E reigning world champion. So needless to say, there is a ton of talent on the modern Formula E grid. And that's not even talking about some of the drivers that have competed since the sport was founded in 2014. We've had the likes of Jacques Villeneuve, Felipe Massa and Jarno Trulli, all former Formula 1 race winners. And now quickly moving along, and I want to talk about the power boosts the cars can get during each 45-minute long race. Most of the time the cars run with about 200 kilowatts of power or 270 brake horsepower, but this can be increased by one of two ways. Starting with attack mode, which gives the driver another 25 kilowatts of energy, ticking up to about 300 brake horsepower. On every circuit on the calendar, the driver can stray off the racing line, driving through a small section of track to activate attack mode for 4 minutes at a time, and personally I love this idea. It's the definition of a risk versus reward. You lose a ton of time going off the racing line onto the dirty part of the track where the attack zone activation point is, but then you really have the opportunity to fight your way back while others ahead are also required to pick up attack mode, as it is mandatory to use at least 2 times throughout the race in 4-minute increments. Since there are currently no pit stops in Formula E, the cars do the entire race on the same set of tyres, attack mode is a fantastic way of adding an element of strategy throughout a race, forcing the drivers to find the right balance between being aggressive with their energy and being conservative with their energy. But then we get onto the other power boost, which is fan boost, and it's completely fine, apart from the fact it is by far my least favourite thing about Formula E. Why does it exist? It is the stupidest concept I could ever imagine for motorsport. How it works is that before each race, the fans are able to vote as to which drivers receive fan boost during a race. The top 3 drivers as voted by the fans will then receive the fan boost, which gives the driver an extra 50 kilowatts of energy for the driver to use on command for only 5 seconds in a race. Now 5 seconds doesn't seem like a lot, but consider for a second that the race winner, or maybe even champion, is decided in an overtake where one car uses fan boost to take the lead when the other car doesn't have it. It would leave a sour taste in my mouth. It just doesn't sit right with me that the most popular drivers exclusively have this ability. I mean, I get it, it's a way for Formula E to have more fan interactivity, but being able to directly influence the speed of a driver's car is pushing the boundaries in my opinion. I think they should either give everyone fan boost or more simply just get rid of it entirely. Now that that little rant is over, I want to talk about the overall presentation of the series, of which I think is one of Formula E's strongest attributes. The graphics and overall race broadcast are done exceptionally well in my opinion, especially with the inclusion of the driver's eye camera we sometimes see during a race, and I do quite like the modern blue aesthetic they have for all their marketing material. I just think it looks really sharp and clean. If I do have to criticise something though, I think at times they do try and seem a bit too obsessed with this futuristic aesthetic and presentation. I mean, is it really necessary for every single thing a driver does to have its own individual annoying sound effect during a race broadcast? I don't think so, but I digress, these are just nitpicks of course. So to come to an end, fan boost is the only part of Formula E I genuinely dislike. Other than that, I love attack mode, the drivers and cars are fantastic. The tracks, although some leave a lot to be desired and all look pretty similar, as a whole can produce some pretty good racing. Overall, I think that's it, just summarising briefly my overall thoughts on Formula E as a beginner, as a series acting as a kind of insight as to what motorsport might look like in the future, when other series like Formula 1 and the World Endurance Championship change fully to electric powertrains. But anyway guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe, comment, share, and I'll be back in the next video. See ya!